Who doesn't love cake? And if it's by the ocean, even better. A few years ago, I posted this on Facebook with this song and photos. Just as well I have a sense of humour, as my teenager told me they were in fact not eating cake, that it was a metaphor for sex. Maybe it's the generational thing, or maybe because I'm asexual, I didn't get the innuendo. Like the naked body, flirting, or indeed cake by the ocean, these things have no sexual context to me. I can only speak for myself, and this is my story, but sex is never an end goal for me, or automatically something that I equate things to. I don't like boxes. We are more than our sexuality, our religious beliefs, our career, or our relationship status. Hey, I'm Amanda, and I'm a publicist, an entertainer, I'm disabled, I'm an activist, a mother, I'm a dog lover, and I'm asexual. But above all, I'm a unique, complex human being. I grew up in 70s, 80s Ireland in a small rural town. My parents were respectable, religious, pretty ordinary really. And being an only child, I lived a sheltered life. Back then, things like homosexuality, divorce, unmarried mothers, they simply weren't talked about and just swept under the carpet. Unless, of course, they were brought up on the Late Late Show on Friday night, and then they were scandalous. The housewives would have a little gossip about it after Mass on a Sunday. As I grew up, I had been instilled with the idea that you met a boy, fell in love, got married and lived happily ever after. Even in my mid-teens, I had no knowledge of what sexual attraction was or indeed how the act took place, which was hardly surprising given the sex education we received.
So this is the newlywed couple here, and they're showing their love for each other by lovemaking. Lovemaking just means making each other feel loved. How do you make a person feel loved? Well, you give them kisses and hugs and you hold them close. But between a man and a woman, it's a bit different. Because when they hold each other really close and give a long kiss and a warm hug, they tell each other that they're beautiful and everything like that. And they also have a bit of a laugh because they are the best of friends. And then something happens.
Yep, and that was it. Something happened. What happened, we didn't know. The first time I got to see what sex actually was when I watched the movie Fatal Attraction. That was some years later, and I was horrified. I went to an all-girls high school. It was a convent school ran by the nuns. At break time and after school, the girls would relish any opportunity to talk to the boys from the neighbouring school, and they'd talk about this boy or that boy and how they fancied him. I didn't feel this. I got bullied a lot as I've always been different. Now I know it was probably because I'm on the autism spectrum. But my lack of interest in boys was just really another thing to add to the list of taunts. Eventually I made up stuff. I would pretend I had a boyfriend from a different town just to get them to stop. I didn't have good social skills with people my own age, as I was used to being around adults, being an only child. I was a very good student and I was very interested in medicine, politics or journalism as a career. When I was 15, there was a male teacher who used to give me special attention. He would spend the free periods talking about subjects of mutual interest, and I just liked having the company. But one day he made a pass at me. I ran away as it made me feel very uncomfortable. I told the nun who was principal of the school, and after questioning the teacher, he blamed me. He said that I had encouraged him and that I had a crush on him, and he was married. I was sent to the priest to ask for forgiveness, and all the blame was put on me. How ironic. I wouldn't have had a clue how to make a pass or seduce anyone. Things had now turned full circle, from being taunted for having no interest in boys to suddenly being the town slut. This put an end really to my academic ambitions, as I was so depressed that I had to leave school. We don't have to take our clothes off to have a good time. Oh no, we can dance and party all night. The magic's a champagne. It wasn't cherry wine with me, it was cake, buns and brown bread. The couple of boys that I dated after I left school seemed to be just as innocent as I was, and we did indeed live in a time where a good time didn't involve taking your clothes off. I didn't really feel any pressure. I was starting to become suffocated and needed to spread my wings. I wanted to start living my own life. I wanted to be rebellious and free from the restraints and pressure of what everyone expected from me. So I went to England. Sex was everywhere. Scantily clad women, condoms, same-sex couples out openly, and guys who at every opportunity were trying to get off with you. This certainly wasn't Catholic Ireland. I honestly couldn't understand this obsession with sex or how it was enjoyable. The first intimate relationship I had was with someone that I was seeing for about a year. He was someone I cared about. I loved him. But after we had sex for the first time, I went to the toilet and I threw up. I never told him. I pretended I enjoyed it. I mean, how could I tell him? Then I found every excuse that I could think of to get out of having sex. Just when I despaired that I would feel passionate about anything, I found a cure in my love of music and the entertainment industry. Eventually I would end up going back to college to study in media, but over the years I have derived more pleasure from my work than I ever did from a relationship.
A little time to think things over. Better read between the lines in case I need it when I'm older. I wanna know what I'll be. I want you to show me.
The reason why I've talked about my past sexual history so deeply is because I want to demonstrate how if we're not supported in puberty to discover our sexual identity, it sets us up for failure after failure, which is exactly what happened to me. I went for guys that were just not that into me, guys that were unavailable, guys that were closet gay. And I know that subconsciously this was linked to my inability to have a normal and real, honest relationship. I say normal because if you're dating and begin by saying that you don't ever want to have sex, it's pretty much over before it's begun. It's abnormal to society.
Oh, good, you're looking up in that house on the hill, looking out for love, big, big love.
Eventually I married my best friend, and we didn't have sex until after we were married. Almost immediately the problems began all over again. The excuses, the building resentment after every time, and picking rows because of it. I firmly believe that the problem was with me. I was a prude, frigid, probably my upbringing, maybe what happened to me with the teacher. I constantly tried to change myself and force myself to enjoy this dreaded act.
Doing it and doing it and doing it well. We doing it and doing it and doing it well. We doing it and doing it and doing it well.
I'm not one to ever give up on something, so I was determined that I would master this art of sex. I began to experiment around, and in fact I would boast about the sex that I'd had. The real reason being, every time I had sex, it felt like such an achievement that I had managed to get through it. Kind of like the Facebook status, marked safe from sex. It was like this huge act of survival that I'd managed to get through once again, and it was something to be proud of. This went on for years, and eventually after it ended I began to question whether I was gay or not. In a way I hoped that I was a lesbian, because at least if you're gay or lesbian, well, there's someone out there for you, but as asexual you feel really isolated and alone.
Too late for the other side. Caught in a chase, 25 to life. Too late for the other side. Caught in a chase, 25 to life. Too late.
getting my life back.
I was still attracted to happily ever after, but I just didn't have sexual attraction. I remember one of my relationships, we had this thing where we used to say love you forever. But love you forever seemed to just mean love you till I'm not getting what I want in the bedroom. The last physical relationship I had is just over 10 years ago now, even though it is only 6 years ago that I discovered that asexuality is a thing. It was mentally and emotionally abusive. For the most part before that, apart from once or twice, I had never felt forced. But this time, no did not mean no. He would force me by different means, coercion, blackmail, etc. I didn't see it as rape back then, as I didn't fight, it wasn't violent. But now with the whole Me Too movement, I do.
But I'm sad for all the time I had to wait, 'cause I'm learning the truth. I'm sick and tired of always being sick and tired.
By the time I managed to get out of it, I hated myself. I couldn't look at my body in the mirror without feeling disgust. I swore never again would I put myself through this. Even when I found out about asexuality in Scotland, I didn't feel I had the right to claim it, as I'd had sexual relations, I'd had kids, and there was no one to talk to tell me I could. And this is only 6 years ago.
Well, it's gonna take more to put me under. Gonna take more to put me under. Come harder, you push on me, I'm gonna push back harder. Got more than a little bit left. Oh, so don't put dirt on me just yet.
I knew I was on the asexual spectrum, but still I wasn't done searching for that happy ever after that society has us aspire to. I tried to have platonic relationships, I had a spiritual relationship.
I want sexual healing, baby.
Most asexual people will be able to relate to platonic, often meaning someone who thinks they will be the one to convert you. People who are not asexual find it very difficult to understand how someone can never experience sexual desire. But in the same way as someone who is asexual, I find it very difficult to understand how people can. Telling someone who's asexual that they just haven't met the right person or there's some cure out there is exactly the same as telling someone who's gay that they need to go for conversion therapy. 2 years ago, after I almost died, I finally gave up and accepted that it's okay to be you. You don't need to be a +1 to be complete, and honestly, I'm far happier being single. Sex has ruined so many things in my life and been responsible for so many bad choices. And all this could have been avoided and could have been so different if I had just known about my own sexual identity or had the right support. Asexuality is a spectrum, and people identify in that spectrum in a lot of different ways. There's demisexuality, which means developing a sexual attraction after an emotional connection has been established. There's aromantic, which means the companionship end of a relationship is attractive, but not the sexual. There's sex repulsed, and that's the one that I most identify with now. However, doing this video has made me realise that it wasn't always this way. There was a time I think I may have been aromantic, but life changed that. People marry and have relationships with all kinds of strange things. There's objectophilia, spectrophilia, etc. These things could potentially fall under the asexual umbrella and be a result of the inability to have a physical relationship with a person. These people are mostly shunned by the same society who brainwashed us into thinking that we have to have a relationship to fit in.
I'm feeling good from my head to my shoes. Know where I'm going and I know what to do. I tidied up my point of view. I got a new attitude.
I'm in control, my worries are few. 'Cause I got friends like I never knew. Ooh, 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 ooh. I got a new attitude.
I know now that I can claim asexuality, even though I've had sex, even though the stimulation may have been momentarily pleasurable at the time. I can claim asexuality because I have never felt in the mood, looked at someone and desired them sexually. Now, instead of looking for someone to give my love to, I focus that love on myself. Loving yourself isn't selfish, it's self-respect, it's knowing your worth, and not changing or compromising who you are for anyone. This is not something that occurred due to a bad experience. I was born this way. I only ever had sex to feel loved, to try and keep a partner happy, because I believed I had to find my happy ever after. As sexual freedom is more and more a part of society, more than it ever was, I don't want others to go through all I had to wait until they're 50 to find out who they are. I want more awareness and acceptance of asexuality. I want a support network to help people understand their own sexuality at an earlier age. Let's keep this going and make our voices heard. Happy Asexual Pride.